and I don't care. It was belt to ass all game. Like, it was. It was.
So we'll see Mount Union. It's nice to talk about you, but we'll see you in November.
Hello and welcome back to Division I Rejects. I'm your host, Kobe Manzo. This is D1R 212 on the night of September 16th. We've got some good coverage, good content for you tonight, talking Division II and Division III football. Not much in the way of the NAI slate. Matt Schwarzler not joining us tonight, so won't have as much in the NAI for you. But tonight in D2 football, we got some big top 25 matchups to talk about, one of which I had the chance to see in person. We also might have the Division II version of Travis Hunter that we're talking about on the show tonight, so definitely stick around for that. In Division III, we've got historic starts for fringe top 25 teams. We're talking about the squads that are making some noise, maybe not quite on the national stage yet, but that you need to know about come October, November, playoff time, where they might be a part of the conversation. How big is the gap from the top dogs to the rest of the top 25? We talk about the cream of the crop and how those matchups fared this weekend. And then we also talk about a Division III game that had to switch fields during the game. Because of weather delay, the teams got onto buses and went to a different field to finish the game. Ridiculous story. Definitely stick around for it. But no guests tonight, just a lot of football talk. And without further ado, let's get right into that with the Division II level. Starting things off in the Division II football realm, we're back after a couple weeks away, and boys, we had a big-time show at Duluth and Mankato, but I'm excited to talk about those teams, many more tonight as we get into the D2 slate. Let's start things off, though, with the Division II football Walter Camp Football Foundation Gridiron 1880 Players of the Week. That was a mouthful. I got through it, though. Here we are. Players of the Week. Daniel Thomas, the running back from UVA-Wise. 21 carries, 318 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day. That's a big-time performance. Certainly needs to be honored. Certainly just as impressive, though. Monte Morrow from Upper Iowa, the receiver. 8 catches, 216 yards, 4 touchdowns. Every other grab in the end zone, boys. That's just stupid. Like, that stat line was actually stupid. There's no way we can't include that, right?
No, you can't. That's insane.
I couldn't even believe that one.
Kobe, it's very similar. Kobe, very similar to what J-Mo was talking about, right? He's like, man,
Yes.
I average 50 yards of reception. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy.
That's certainly in that same category. Peyton Shaw, another big-time playmaker from CSU Pueblo in the defensive backfield, the safety, had 6 tackles, 2 takeaways through the air, 2 pass breakups against a really talented Central Missouri team that we've come to associate with one of the better offensive schemes in all of D2 football. On the road, pick up the win. That's why he gets the nod from CSUP. And then finally, double trouble in the special teams realm. Jaden Apgar from Minnesota Duluth. I got to see this one in person. And I'll tell you right now, special teams, not very crucial part of this game for the most part. We're kind of sloppy at a lot of different phases of the game. When it mattered, though, he stepped up. The kicking unit, that specialist group from Duluth, stepped up. He was 3 for 3 on the day. Nothing crazy outside of 35 yards, but the game winner as time expired. And the wild part about it, Duluth is driving down the field. We're all tied up at 14 in the fourth, and they line up for what should be the game-winning kick. Well, Coach Hoffner from Minnesota State calls a timeout as the kick is going to ice him. That kick was blocked, and because he called the timeout, you get another attempt, goes up, lines it up. That thing was good. That would have been good from 45 or 50. He knocks that one through, and Duluth wins. So that's a big-time one. And then, Tim, up in your neck of the woods, Israel Geraldo, 3 kickoff returns, almost 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's electricity, dude.
Yeah, back-to-back kick returns against my Southern Owls. We got to fix our special teams, boys. We got to get that going.
We definitely do, man. But let's talk about some of the biggest games from this weekend. And I got to lead it off with this Minnesota Duluth team. And the question that I'm asking today is, can Duluth run the table in the NSIC? For me, it's really a matter of why not? If not the Bulldogs, then who? You look at this week, and I'll talk about Sioux Falls, the opponent they have coming up this weekend, but look at the quarterback room right now. We all know about Wall Jasper and what he's been able to do, the 3-time captain for the Bulldogs, but how about the man behind him, Jacob Eggert? He comes in, he shows off some moxie and some swagger in a game against one of the top teams in the country. Watching on the sideline, this guy comes in, he didn't skip a beat. They didn't ask him to do too much, make any extravagant throws, but what he did was extend the play with his legs. He hit this little stutter step. He's diving for the pylon right in front of us on the sideline. The dude came out, and as soon as he hits that, he's got celebrations. Like, I loved watching this guy play. It was a very different experience than watching Kyle Walljasper, which is great. That could be a great tandem. I'd be very interested to see if Duluth incorporates him more into whether it's Wildcat or kind of some more traditional offensively when Walljasper gets beaten up, if that happens at his size. But this Bulldog team, man, you go down the offensive skill positions. Luke Deneke, the tight end, had a big-time day, 11 catches, 141 yards. He's a big target for Minnesota Duluth. Made a lot of contested catches, really good, obviously, with that frame, high-pointing the football. It was kind of Walljasper's best friend when he was rolling out and trying to make some of those plays. They're still missing their top 2 passing threats, boys. That's the crazy part about this. Their 2 best receivers from a year ago are not even back yet. Ames, one of them, was a preseason All-American. We're yet to see him suit up. So if those guys can get healthy and be back in the lineup here, there's some other pieces that have not really even been tapped into for this Duluth offense. And then defensively for them, you're sitting there watching this Bulldog defense. Their defense looks the part, boys. I think you know exactly what I mean when I say that. This squad, they roll out and they're just intimidating. They're imposing at the line of scrimmage. That D-line certainly was disruptive. They got some linebackers that fly around the field. Guys like Ross Rivard, Ian Ackley, those guys certainly were making a lot of plays. And I'll tell you this, guys. Duluth, Mankato, that's the loudest I've heard the pads pop in a minute, in a very long time. 0 love lost between these two schools. Seth, who was there on site with us, 5 minutes into the game, turns and looks at me and goes, I'm not going to lie, Kobe, D2 football might be different. Might be different. From a dude who's coached and played at some pretty high level D3 ball, especially in the WIAC, he said, I don't know, man. This might be different. So this weekend, of course, is the big test for the Bulldogs. Sioux Falls. That's the one that has kind of been the Bulldogs' kryptonite as of late. 2-5 versus USF in the history of this matchup. The Cougars are averaging 47 points per game right now. Can Duluth keep up in a shootout? The answer is no. That's not their game. I don't think they have the offense that can keep up in a shootout. What's going in their favor is that this game won't turn into that. It should not. With the defense that Duluth has, unless they're blowing the top off of this coverage, the Cougars are, I feel that the top scoring defense in the NSIC right now in Duluth is going to keep this game a little bit more tight. They have to play on their terms. This can't turn into a shootout. I don't think Duluth's offense is able to maintain that. Do you guys catch any of that game, Mankato, Duluth? You see any of the highlights?
A little bit.
Yeah, Kobe.
That was a
awesome.
really exciting one to be at.
To be honest with you guys, it was awesome to see you guys just there, right? Obviously, you know, when a game comes down to the last second, it's going to come down to either a quarterback or a linebacker, DB stepping up. Most of the times, it's going to come down to a kick, right? And you talked about it, right? Like it's coming down to, you know, as a coach, do you think about, oh, I called timeout and of course it gets blocked? Or with the amount of times we've seen a guy like Youngwei Koo miss the field goal and then all of a sudden the next one he drills it. You know, against the Bucks, it was the opposite. He made it and then he missed the one after the timeout, right? So it's like when it comes down to stuff like that, right? And it's great to be live and have that experience. It's awesome to see you guys there. And I'm sure that, you know, I'm not saying that there's any competition between the last 2 schools that we visited for D1R game day, but I'm sure it was one of those where it's like, oh,
hey, small school Saturday now.
Oh yeah, that's true. My bad. I like the new name, to be honest with you.
Good. I'm glad, and it definitely. Yeah, I'm not going to rank one or the other, just in favor of not pissing anybody off or maybe losing any friends there. Both have been fantastic. Both have been legitimately incredible. And the other big time kickoff that was around the same time, Tim, was Grand Valley going down to the jungle. Pitt State. They crawl out of that hole they were in of 0-2, and they do it in a big way against the top opponent in the country, man.
Yeah, and this was one of the games of the week last week leading up to it. Grand Valley State not looking like they usually do this year. You know, take away that fumble recovery TD for Grand Valley. And we're talking about a 7-point performance for the Laker offense. That's not what you want, especially for a team that's got Ferris State down the road. And this Ferris State team dropped 34 on Pitt State, barely over 200 yards of offense, only 50 yards on the ground, 2 interceptions, and the big one, 14 penalties. That just shows undisciplined football. Not going to cut it if you want to be one of those teams contending at the end of the year. But, for the quarterback, Jackson Berry of Pitt State, they started out with a gauntlet. And I talked about this in my video for the games of the week last week. They started out with 2 top 10 teams and a third top 25 team just to start out the season. It was one of the toughest probably starts the season in all of college football, an absolute gauntlet. But he's getting better at taking care of the football. No interceptions last game. He's improved in his efficiency in passing, though, is the big thing. That first game versus Ferris State did not fare well. 18 for 41, 43% passing and an interception. Central Oklahoma, a little bit better, 60%. But against Grand Valley, he threw for 70% efficiency, no turnovers, and they won. So if you take care of the ball plus efficiency passing, you're going to get the dub for Pitt State. And I think the schedule is going to ease up on them a little bit. So look for this team. Now they're a top 10 team again. Look for this team. Could be scary down the road.
Now, that schedule, when you say ease up, it does compared to the last 3 games, but the next 3 are, it doesn't get much better. You're at home again, at least, in Kearney Smith, but it's against Fort Hays State, who's still receiving votes in the top 25 poll, who upset a very good CSUP team very recently. You go on the road at Emporia. You're back home for Kearney. It doesn't get a whole lot better, although it's not Ferris, GV, and UCO.
Who made that? Who did the AD of University of Florida make that schedule, dude? What's going on here, dude?
No, that's exactly what I was thinking about when you said top schedules in the country. I'm like, them in Florida. Like,
it is, dude. It's 1A and 1B. And to talk about Jackson Berry a little bit more, he came in from Southern Utah. And a lot of times you see that D1 bounce back. It happens because, well, the guy wasn't really cutting at the D1 level. He wants a new opportunity to come in and be the guy, right? Be endorsed as the guy, even if it's at a quote-unquote smaller level, to go out and be the starter. Not really the case with Jackson. He's a guy that put up a lot of great stats and put up some great film at Southern Utah. 129 of 205 passes in 2024. That's pretty good volume for a dude that's making, again, the quote-unquote step down. He threw for over 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions a year ago. So he has a history of taking care of the ball, which was kind of surprising for me to start this year off. They didn't do maybe as well of a job of doing that, but to see him righting the ship, so to speak, against a quality GV opponent was very encouraging.
It's all about that transition, right? I mean, going down, it doesn't even matter about going down or up or whatever. Going to a new school, a new offense, new coach, new offensive coordinator, you always have to have a couple of games to adjust, and it doesn't help when you're playing the best team in the country to start off, your career there. So it's tough. It's tough, but it seems like he's adjusting now. So we'll see how the rest of the season plays out.
100%. Now let's move over, talk about GLVC GMAC action. UIndy, they take down Ashland in a top 25 contest, and that's been the Achilles heel for UIndy. We know that the Greyhounds are going to go run the table inside of the GLVC. What do they do against the top talent in that region outside of that conference? And now with the reshuffled super regions, this could be a really big win when it comes to the playoffs and the seeding coming down the line. But Drew, before I let you talk about this matchup a little bit, boys, we got to talk about one of the guys on this UIndy team. Anthony Crowell, started at both wide receiver and corner for this UIndy squad. He also returns kicks. And, of course, the guy you're going to talk about immediately is a Travis Hunter type performer at the Division II level. I'm not here to make that comp. Obviously, that's a generational talent type of deal. But what I will tell you is that he is dynamic. He's doing it in all facets, all phases of the game, which is incredibly impressive. And he's doing it at a very high clip. This is not just, out there to fill the stat book and for me to talk about him in a great way. He's a 2-time All-GLVC first-team selection, 2023 GLVC Freshman of the Year. He led the team last year with 41 catches. So offensively, obviously, is getting some things done. But he did enter the portal. From what I saw, he entered the portal in December of last year. I was glad, though, to see him back with the Greyhounds. His brother Key left, committed to D1 East Carolina, so they at least kept one of 2 on the roster of the Crowells.
Yeah, credit to Anthony, man. First and foremost, not only being that athletic, but that smart. There were multiple defensive meetings that I would walk out and be like, "What are we doing on Saturday? I gotta get in my playbook, right?" And for him to then do that and then go to the offensive side of the ball and special teams, and probably go to class. Like, let's not forget that these kids
probably go to class,
right? Like, probably, keyword probably, right? Like, I had my fair share of missed classes. I know that, especially my last year. But at the end of the day, that's awesome to him. And let's talk about the defensive side of the ball, right? This game was something. Like, I'm going to read you guys some of these stats, and, like, I'm pretty sure you'd be like, oh, this guy got player of the week, right? Or that guy was probably the best player in the field that day. And then I'll read you the next guys, and then the next guy, and then the next guy. So here we go. I titled this one defense, defense, defense. 4 total interceptions in this one, right? Teams were combined 7 of 30 on third down.
Yeah, that's awful.
You guys want to do the math on that. It's just not good, right? I'm not going to do the quick math. Ashland had 8 sacks, as in 8, okay? Michael Shimmick had 3 sacks himself and a forced fumble. Elijah Baldridge had 9 tackles and a sack. Jalen Wilson for UIndy, those were all Ashland. Now going over to UIndy, Jalen Wilson had 13 total tackles and a PBU. Alvin Contreras had 3 turnovers, 2 fumble recoveries, and an interception. Danny Royster had 3 sacks and a fumble recovery. Like, that's
ridiculous.
We played Ashland. I think we played Ashland 2 or 3 years. I think it was 2 years. I was at Northwood. Always a well-coached team, so it's not surprising to see this defensively. Obviously, offensively, it's kind of surprising. They were always well-coached. Definitely had our number over the years. But UIndy, right? Like, let's look at them for a simple fact of, Kobe last year, a Saginaw Valley team that got upset by Northwood, and then all of a sudden goes into UIndy and gets a dub right there, right? So it was always
they had their number for a couple of years.
Yeah, so it was always like, can UIndy win outside of the GLVC or what did I
say?
Yeah,
you're right.
GLVC, yeah. So many G conferences, it gets confusing after a while.
And they're all in the same super region now too. GMAC, GLIAC, GLVC are all grouped into the same region with the Northern Sun now.
Yeah, so it's one of those to where it's like, this is a huge program win, for them. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, here we go. Like this, where does this take you? You know what I'm talking about, right? You look at a team like Ashland, right? Ashland is kind of been, not necessarily like the top dog every year in the GMAC, but a cream of the crop, right? Like they're usually at the top of the, the conference every single year, to the point where it's just like, all right, this might be one of those resets, right? Like you offensively looking at this, if you're Ashland, you're like, we couldn't have played, we had look at the turnovers, right? Like, where are we playing so sloppy, right? But then defensively, what do you tell your guys, right? Like you gave up a ton of points, but you had 8 sacks, you had turnovers, right? So it's just like, it's one of those to where it's like defensive coaches, there's still so much to get better at, right? And it's early in the year. We're not even in the conference play yet for most of these conferences, right? And Ashland, like I said, they'll be fine in the GMAC. As someone that's played in the GMAC, they're one of those schools, like I said. But let's shift focus to offense. Like Alonzo Derrick still came up big for UIndy. He had 129 yards on 8 receptions. That's no average Joe day, right? Like that's putting in work. And then even with the turnovers and 8 sacks taken, Gavin Suckup had 332 all-purpose yards, right? I believe 59 of those came on the ground. So it's like UIndy, was, even though they had all these turnovers, all these sacks, credit to them, right? Like this was not one of those where it's like offense is completely shut down. This was like one of those, hey, like we're moving the ball, but we have a lot of negative plays too. So like imagine what they can do with all these without the negative plays.
Yeah, this game was all over the place, and I'll credit UIndy for this in terms of their strength of schedule. Now, with the automatic qualifier fully integrated into the Division II football landscape when it comes to the national playoffs, teams like UIndy that are favored inside of their conference, I don't believe there's going to be a lot of competition. Obviously, Truman is sometimes in the conversation. A team like Quincy maybe could be there, but UIndy's the team out of the GLVC. They had no obligation to go out and schedule a team like Ashland, other teams outside of their conference to go and quote-unquote prove themselves. A lot of teams would take that, schedule not maybe a cupcake, but a team that they feel like they had a really, really good chance of winning early on in week 1 and 2, week 0, whatever that looks like. And UIndy didn't take that route.
Ashland was ranked.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Like UIndy didn't take that route. UIndy went out and scheduled some tough non-conference opponents, hardened them up for this conference schedule. And to be honest, again, they're probably going to go win the GLVC, and they're going to get that AQ. They want to do it the hard way and go and get themselves tested early on, because to me that could be the difference for this University of Indianapolis squad, this Greyhound team, is that in years past there may have been times where this UIndy team wasn't really tested until you got out of conference play and into the playoffs, and then it came on a big stage where the lights were bright at Lubber Stadium in Grand Valley or other places against these big time marquee opponents. Can you get some of those growing pains and things out of the way now with the veteran quarterback, a staff, and a culture that's been instilled there for years? Can you get some of those pains out of the way early in the season so that you're prepared when the moment becomes bigger later on? That is certainly going to be a big piece for that Greyhound squad. Now, with the new rankings dropping from D2Football.com, we're going to talk about a couple of the squads that we're always going to have this conversation of, like, not maybe this team should be ranked right now, but hey, these teams could make a very good, very compelling argument as to why they should be in the top 25. I'll start things off, fellas. Virginia State, the Trojans, that is my pick. And I'll tell you this is why. We've only seen them play one Division II opponent. They got a bye week. And the one D2 opponent they played against was a Barton team that I think a lot of people expected to be pretty solid, even after losing some big pieces in the offensive skill rooms this offseason. Still a lot of expectations for the Bulldogs moving over to Conference Carolinas. I think they were partially the shoe-in pick to be at the top of that conference. They got blown out by Virginia State early on this year, and they lost. Virginia State did a week later in overtime to an FCS Norfolk State team led by Michael Vick that is getting a lot of buzz, and obviously the recruits, and that program seems to be off in the right direction. You lost in overtime to that squad. We'll see how everything shakes out. That might be a decent football team. They had a bye last week. I think that kind of leaves you not maybe at the top of mind of the national scene in terms of the media poll and the voters because they didn't see you play this week. So what reason necessarily could you get on a bye week to get thrown into the top 25? But guys, this is a team that was 6-1 in the CIAA a year ago, and even better the year prior. The last 3 years, all of them under Coach Frazier, as long as he's at the helm, this team is going to have a solid positive trajectory. And doing a little bit of research on him, Coach Frazier, he won the CIAA championship as a quarterback at Bowie State. He was 18-3-1 as the starter for the Bulldogs. He certainly has the Trojans going in the right direction as well. But Drew, keep it going. Talk to me about another squad that could certainly make this argument.
Yeah, first and foremost, I wouldn't be able to get into this topic without shouting out to the Michigan Tech Huskies. It is awesome to see them balling out.
There you go.
It's one of those things that, yeah, they're top 25. Shout out to them, Coach Metlack. Shout out to AB. He's been an absolute dog this year. Great to see that. But the team I'm going to focus on within the same region, really, and not to sound like a homer or anything like that, but the Tiffin Dragons, right? So it's one of those weird things in the week ones and the week twos. It's almost like, okay, we deal with it at the high school level, right? Where it's like, okay, did they beat a really good team or did they just beat a really average team? Oh, and then they went and played a really good team and it's weird, right? So it's one of those to where it's like, all right, how
dangerous game.
Yeah. And so for Tiffin, not only did they beat up Wayne State, beat them up, then Wayne State goes and has a really close game with a Findlay team that's receiving votes, right? It's one of those to where it's like, okay, so how good is Wayne State? How good's Tiffin? So who does Tiffin play the next week? Only the number one team in the nation and only loses to them by 7. So I understand where it's like no team in the history, I don't think, of college football loses a game and then gets ranked, right? I just don't think that's ever happened. Tiffin, to me, is a team.
Unless you're Notre Dame, right? They might actually be in that category.
Notre Dame might be in that category, or just every time Nick Saban lost by 5, they moved them up. You know what I mean? So, but no, I think it is one of those things where they aren't ranked right now. But as we keep going within the season, the Tiffin Dragons, right? They're playing in the GMAC, and like we just talked about with Ashland, they're part of the cream of that crop. Usually, recently, it's been Tiffin, Findlay, Ashland, right?
Sure.
Those 3 teams in the GMAC that have kind of stepped up, kind of been that team. I do sense that there is another team coming up there in a couple of weeks that we might be talking about. Maybe later today, talk about them. But all I'm going to say is Tiffin is one of those teams to where it's like not only are they coached really well, right? But they also have a lot of athletes. They are big. They've always been big, and the defense has always been very solid. And when you score 34 points against Ferris State, 34, they scored 34 against Wayne State, 34 against Ferris State. Offense can clearly move the ball.
100%. And that game too, that almost got out of hand. I mean, Ferris State was up 28-7. And I talked about it on the show. I think one of the biggest pieces when you're playing a Ferris State, a Grand Valley, a Mankato, a Pitt State, we go down that list, right? One of the biggest things is not getting beat before you step on the field. Tiffin had no flinch.
Don't flinch.
No flinch, right? And you're down 3 scores. There was no flinch. They score with 2 minutes left going into halftime. That felt like a very pivotal moment for this Dragon squad. And going forward, their last touchdown was about 2 minutes left in the fourth. It made it a one-score game. There was very much still life and still a chance for this Tiffin team. It did not get away. Those were not pity points going on the board in the fourth quarter. Coach Anise does not deal in those. He's not going to let someone score to make the game a little more interesting. This is a Tiffin squad that definitely proved themselves. They have a lot of great returners on both sides of the ball. The offensive backfield is absolutely loaded, and they'll start their GMAC play next week against Ohio Dominican. So that's on the road, but we'll see how they fare. Tim, close us out. Who's your pick for a fringe 25 team that feels like they'd have a good argument to be ranked?
Yes, sir. I'm going to go with Northwest Missouri. They're 2-1, and they're at the top of the MIAA right now. They're 1-0 in the conference. It is very early. Their only loss came to Minnesota State. That's a very good Minnesota State team. Sure. But in the last two games, they outscored their opponents 83-27. Last game versus Texas A&M Kingsville, they had 646 offensive yards. So that offense is getting going. They have a little bit of a gauntlet coming up in the next 4 games. If they win 3 of the next 4 games, and this is a schedule that includes Fort Hays State, Central Missouri, Central Oklahoma. Missouri Southern is 2-0 right now. That's who they got up next week. So I think if they win 3 out of the next 4 games, I think we're talking about a top 20, top 15 team. So look for Northwest Missouri to sneak into the top 25, I think, in the coming weeks if they can, win some games.
I like that pick. An explosive day at home for the Bearcats. 646 yards of total offense. That's the most for the Bearcats since September 10th of 2022. It's also the first time since 2023 that they've had 2 100-yard rushers in the same game. Yeah. That certainly feels like a big one. John McMenamin, he is 8-0 all-time when leading at the half as a head coach between Wayne State and Northwest, and he gets his first win at home with the Bearcats. So that's a big deal. And they're not beating up the Little Sisters of the Poor. This is a Javelinas team that we've talked about, I think, quite a bit on this show. That's no pushover game. So certainly don't think that is a bad pick on your part there. And we'll see how that team kind of grows and evolves as the season continues. But let's take a look at some scores from around the country. Drew, your Huskies, 34-21 over Hillsdale. They moved to 3-0 and get into the top 25 in the national poll. Carson Newman at Mars Hill. That one went into overtime. The Eagles fall 24-31. Mars Hill takes out the win. And then you go Gulf South. Delta State, who was 19th in the previous rankings, they get upset by UMC Pembroke 21-25 at the Braves home field. And continuing over here in some MEC and Gulf South play, this time the Gulf South reigns victorious. Number 18 West Alabama prevails over the Golden Eagles 24-28. A kind of a shocker here. Number 15 Virginia Union upset by Edward Waters 38-41. In what was kind of a shootout. We talked a bit about this Tiffin team who gave a very good fight to a number 1 ranked Ferris State squad, 34-41 on the road in Big Rapids. Then let's go down to the SAC. Emory and Henry takes on number 17 Lenore Ryan. The Wasps beat the Bears last year. This year actually came right down to the end of it as well. 28-31. Lenore Ryan, Coach Socha and company, they prevail at home. And then Drew, the team that you alluded to earlier on, Northwood in the Axe Bowl, once again taking down the Cardinals 38-14. The Timberwolves roll over Saginaw Valley. And finally, in some MIAA action, Nebraska Kearney, their offense shut down by Fort Hays, who comes in at number 22 in last week's ranking. The Tigers win 26-7 on their home field. So I will just tee that up and toss it over to you, Drew. Northwood, that Axe Bowl victory, that's an impressive one, and it feels good to know that last year was not a one-off.
Yeah, it's one of those things to where it's awesome to see. Obviously, I didn't get to win the Axe against Saginaw Valley when I was there. I beat him when I was at Tech, so at the end of the day, I got my lick back. So, but no, it was awesome. It really was. Me and my buddies that obviously that Kobe, Bimba, Jake and Johnny were at the game, and everybody was saying, and I don't care. It was belt to ass all game. Like it was. You go up 28-0, right? Like my brothers both play baseball at SAG. Their baseball coaches were saying this is getting ugly, right? Like it was one of those where like Northwood walked in and walked out with the Axe. And Coach B, Man, if Kobe, if you haven't reposted him shaving with the axe, then that's a ball drop for you. That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
We need a Gillette partnership. I see what they were trying to do there.
Coach B, Tim, if you haven't seen it, you don't know him obviously.
It's incredible.
As well as Kobe and I do. He's the man, right? I love Coach B, one of my favorite coaches. To where obviously when I'm helping out at Oxford, he's one of those guys to where you just like you pull things, right? Where it's like you learn from like Lane Kiffin's like, oh, I pulled this from Nick Saban. Like that's how it felt playing for Coach B, right? Where you're just like that he's a leader of men, and it is awesome to see that. And Northwood's on its way up, right? It's so cool to like being part of that first year with him, right? And then talk about the Huskies as well. Michigan Tech, since going down to Bemidji, is just blowing people out. Like it is like since that first half against Bemidji is just a completely different team.
Yeah, and that's very telling for that squad, and we'll see how that prevails through the, as we get into the GLIAC schedule, how that shapes up. And looking at some of those other games, to mention a few of them, that West Alabama team, that's no slouch in Charleston. As an MEC champion a year ago, a really good squad. Spencer Arsenault for the Tigers. He's a guy we've had on the show. I got a lot of respect for him. Love watching him ball out. He did it with his legs and his arm this week. He was the Gulf South Player of the Week. And you look through a lot of these, man, a lot of big-time playmakers at all levels, but these are some of the scores that stood out to us. Feel like that's a pretty good wrap-up on some of the D2 slate for this week, boys. Anything else I miss?
Nah, man. Southern Connecticut gotta get going. Gotta get going, man. The boys gotta get going. They gotta represent.
Hey, who?
Dude, big game this week versus AIC. I'm rooting for them. But they got to get back to normal.
Who's AIC?
American International.
That's what I thought. Okay, that's what I thought.
The Who drew that they're the Owls, so I tried to sneak one in there. How'd
the Cats do this week?
Do you want me to get them? They're right over there.
You know what?
No, not you, not your Cats. Kobe's Cats.
Yeah. No, Northern played St. Thomas, the FCS St. Thomas, right? And Drew, that game was 7-6 in the fourth quarter, and we lost like 20-6 or something like that. It was oh my goodness. Oh my
Cats right there.
Wait, hold on, I gotta get the graphic off the screen. Here we go.
This is who I thought you were talking about right here. I thought you were talking about these
Bro, it's like yin and yang.
Kobe, it's awesome, right? Officially have, I know Northwood beat them. We know Tech's going to beat them. I mean, I got you this year.
All right. And with that note, appreciate y'all both for joining me. We're going to get, this is kind of the first of many, a little bit of a scramble to get this one done tonight, but we'll get into a rhythm here, a lot more D2 football to discuss, and hopefully, of course, get you guys behind the desk at some point this season. That'd be fun.
That'd be awesome, man.
Sweet. See you, boys. Appreciate both of you. Okay, getting into Division III football tonight. We had an exciting slate this weekend. We were at a D2 site. We still talked a lot of D3 football, fellas. Back in the studios, respectively, to talk a little bit of ball this week. Half recap, half preview. I guess we're like somewhere in between.
Yeah, it feels weird to not be standing next to you guys or sitting next to you guys right now. But happy to see your guys' faces again.
Yeah. Yeah, you say studios, and I'm just sitting in my living room. You guys actually have studios, so let's not call this a studio. Come on.
Correct. We'll start things off with the Week 2 Walter Camp Football Foundation Gridiron 1880 Players of the Week, boys, and we had some fantastic ones in Week 2. It's hard to pick every week, but this week was especially difficult. You start things off at the quarterback spot. Again, we talk about this. This is the award that is given to the best player that week. That had to be Caleb Blaha, Seth. I mean, this is a ridiculous stat line.
I mean, my goodness. So we were doing our show up there in Duluth, and they were just wrapping their game up as we were wrapping our show up, and I was checking the score, and I was like, oh man, it turned out to be quite the game. And then I checked the stats, and I was like, goodness gracious. I mean, 569 yards and 6 tuds. I mean, when Caleb actually plays the full game, which a lot of these games that they score a ton of points, he doesn't play the full game. So
sure.
For him to, play the full game, I actually talked with Coach Walker a little bit after, and they actually they pulled him there towards the end because he ran the ball, threw the ball. I mean, it was a long day. So, But unbelievable performance.
Yeah, that takes a lot physically to be able to go out there and do that. We go over to the wide receiver spot, too, a guy that just had to be honored. 15 catches, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns from Robbie Ballantyne. We talked about him on the show. The brotherly connection, catching the passes from his brother is such a sweet deal. And when you do it both at an elite level, that's what makes it even more special for the Ballantyne bros there at DePaul. And then Ben Egan from Dubuque had himself a day, filled up the stat sheet, did not get the W, but was a big part of the reason why the Spartans were so competitive in that one. Keep rolling here onto the special teams. Brennan McNeely from Hartwick. This was kind of a more interesting pick here. He had 2 blocks, but one of those blocks, boys, led to a 2-point conversion, returned all the way to the other side of the field. Hartwick wins by 2 points. That 2-point conversion, the deciding factor in that one. So Brennan gets our nod for the special teams player of the week. And before we keep going, I did want to touch on the top passers in all of D3 football, courtesy graphic here from D3 Sports Data on Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it. Some of these were ridiculous. Hayden Teeter from Puget Sound, 86 pass attempts.
Oh, my gosh.
They had to have his arm with an ice pack before he left the field. That's like LeBron when he comes out of the game and he's like just mummy wrapped.
I mean, 108 plays total, fellas. I mean, they still ran the ball. They still tried to run the ball a few times. You wouldn't think.
And they lost.
And they lost. I mean,
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I don't know. That's insane.
And the guy, of course, opposite of Blaha in Kelly, 45 attempts through the air, 519 yards and 6 tuds. I mean, that game was ridiculous.
I mean, you could have argued that Kelly had the performance of the week, but it just so happened that the guy that was on the other side of the ball was playing better golf that day. So, I mean, it's like unbelievable. I mean, that game, 1,400 yards of offense total, boys, between the two teams.
That's almost a mile of offense. Dude, you think it's like Seth Howard running laps around the track? It's just the offense is going back and forth. You know, truly, like, it's just unbelievable stuff.
That's perfect. Bryson Rollins definitely up there. Ballantyne, we talked about the brother. I mean, these guys, the quarterback from Utica. There's so many ridiculous stat lines across the board. Had to acknowledge those guys. It's a difficult award to pick every week. Any other big time performances that maybe didn't get honored in our picks, gentlemen?
One that stands out to me is Nathan Usalding from UW Platteville. I mean, he's a young guy, and he actually was runner-up to Caleb Blaha in the Quick Trip WIAC Player of the Week, going for 428 and 4 touchdowns through the air. And this kid has a lot of eligibility left. He's going to be an issue for the WIAC for a long time. Yep,
definitely. Anything else there, Seth, or keep moving?
I mean, I posed the question on the show up in Duluth, like, is Tyler Zalowski going to keep this thing going? And he certainly is. He threw for 6 touchdowns and 385 yards. Certainly wasn't 580 or whatever he had last week, but seems like that's going to be here to stay a little bit.
I like that. Now, we want to talk about some of the matchups that happened this week, and I think the big storyline from some of these was the good teams won. The teams that were supposed to won. It wasn't a very exciting weekend for the underdog. That poses the question, how big is the gap in D3 football? The North Central, Mount Unions, and some of the others that make up the top part of that rankings. Yeah, some people are starting to say that might be wider than anticipated after an offseason that has seen roster turnover, the likes of which we have not really seen, and kind of really getting the COVID player, that fifth-year player out until the NCAA goes around and makes that void a year later. We'll see how the eligibility deal works out with the NCAA. But the teams that were supposed to won, fellas, and they did so in a big way. Let's start with North Central. To me, this was a game that I got to watch at least the highlights of, boys. And I won't lie, I sit here and tell you I watched the thing from start to finish. But this North Central team, you got to remember, this game started with a blocked punt on North Central's first offensive possession. Oshkosh goes in and scores, and I imagine if you're sitting there watching this live, you're like, holy shit, Titans might be onto something here. Is North Central, again, we haven't really seen them in 2025. Is this not going to be their year? Well, that was very quickly shut down as North Central went on to dominate this one. Number 1 versus number 15, a top 25 matchup. How they did it, though, boys, is kind of the more impressive deal. The offensive line, of course, is where it starts. Almost 300 yards rushing on the day, 17 first downs on the ground. You dominate the time of possession battle with over 36 minutes offensively compared to that. And you sustain drives. There were some explosive plays in there, but this is, just chunk yards down the field, demoralizing for that kind of defense. The defensive front front seven held Oshkosh to 50 rushing yards on the day, which is incredibly impressive. And when you win the turnover battle, 2 interceptions to none on your side, that helps. Seem to have got a dude in Garrett Wilson. From what I can tell, great name, by the way, from what I can tell, made a couple maybe questionable decisions early on that led to that block punt, that drive stalling out in the beginning of this one in the first quarter, but he definitely seemed to settle in. And then Demira Shiru definitely could be an interesting piece moving forward in the Wildcat. They mixed him in there a little bit. So dynamic, explosive, legit contender all over again for North Central against an Oshkosh team that we were so high on recently because of that win at Linfield.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the gap, Kobe. Like the difference between a team like North Central and Oshkosh is a hell of a football
So
team, like
good.
you had just said. But like at this point, it's like, is North Central ever going to play a close regular season game? When was the last time like you said, like they went down 7-0 after that block punt, but like last year, I think their closest regular season game was against Wheaton. They won by like 25 or something. Like
Sure.
they blew them out, and it's like, what are we going to do about that? Like, North Central has just been so dominant in this regular season for so long. I actually saw a stat from a very, very faithful and loyal North Central fan. The last time North Central wasn't like the best team in college football was when these kids were like, there's second graders now that weren't even born yet when North Central was not dominating college football. These kids are in second grade now. It's just absurd. Absurd.
Well, it's one of those things where, I mean, I felt like there was a lot of question marks coming in. What are they going to be
Sure.
without Lennon? What are they going to do with the 3 O-linemen that aren't returning? But every single question seemed to get answered. And it's like, I think we all held in our hearts a little bit of hope that North Central would lay an egg against Oshkosh, but like I certainly did. I was like, all right, the YX for real. The YX always for real. Guess not.
I love that. Talk to me about Mount Union, Grove City. We had to check in live with D3Football.com's Pat Coleman from this one, and things were getting ugly for the Wolverines, dude.
For sure. I mean, shout out, Pat. Thanks for coming on the show and giving us those live updates. He almost got hit in the head a few times by that football. Those guys warming up there on the sideline. But yeah, Mount Union, I mean, just a convincing win. I think we may have all gone into this game a little naive, thinking Grove City could put up a little bit of fight. Maybe it was just me, but I mean, Mount Union was exactly what they always are, and that's just plain dominant. Their quarterback, Mikey Maloney, I think he needs to go by Eminem, the D3 Eminem for a little bit. He may just be a certified dog. Here's his stats through 2 games so far, fellas. He's 40 for 55, 7 touchdowns, 612 yards, no picks, and he's got a 72% completion percentage. I mean, absolutely ridiculous so far. Their running back, Darnell Williams, monster day, career high, 3 rushing touchdowns, second career 100-yard game, including a 67-yarder on the very first drive of the game. Now, here's what I'll say. And Kobe, feel free, cut me off, turn my mic off, whatever you have to do at any point. But they go into a bye week, and this is going to be the last time that they're relevant to talk about until November. Because they're going to go through, they're going to run through their conference. They're going to win every single one of those conference games. I thought Marietta might have a chance looking at what they've done so far. Not a shot. So we'll see. Mount Union, it's nice to talk about you, but we'll see you in November.
There.
You know, man, and we kind of talked about, going into the season with the removal of John Carroll from that conference. Mount Union, they did their due diligence, and obviously favored to win that conference again. But you go out and you schedule Wheaton and Grove City in the first 2 weeks. That feels strategic. Let's get ourselves some tests because maybe we don't have that during the regular season. And that's not to say there aren't going to be a couple challenges with Baldwin Wallace and Marietta. Muskingum's got a squad. There's going to be some teams that they can't just roll out of bed and beat right on any given day. But to your point, there's not a game on this. They're not going to be favored by more than 2 or 3 scores for the rest of the season. So that very well could come to fruition. But another team that was a little maybe more surprising, not quite the North Central Mount Union level, but it's on top of the WIAC lacrosse, Jimmy took care of business on Saturday.
Yeah, the Eagles soared in this one, certainly over Carnegie Mellon. 38-14, a very convincing victory along with a very well-balanced offensive attack, going for 272 through the air and 173 on the ground. They did have 6 penalties for 65 yards, though, so look for them to clean that up the rest of the season. And they dominated the time of possession battle, holding the ball for 39 minutes and 14 seconds compared to Carnegie Mellon's Carnegie Mellon's 20 minutes and 46 seconds. And also, like you guys know, my favorite stat, they went 12 for 19 on third down. But something I was kind of surprised about, it's kind of hard to get to third down 19 times when you score 38 points. Like, you'd think they'd be doing better on first and second down. So, obviously, I mean, they're getting it done, clearly, with 38 points. But, I mean, maybe they got to do a bit better on first and second down. Maybe clean up those penalties, things of that nature.
Certainly very much different kind of deal than Mount Union, and that lacrosse, they've got quite a few ball games to play before we can start talking about them in the conversation for November. But one of the games that had the more unique storyline, fellas, from this weekend, Wabash versus Case Western Reserve at 2 different fields. That's the short of the story here, and this is something that I don't know if I've ever heard of inside of any part of college football. And the short story, fellas, is that thunderstorms, they delay the game originally for an hour, and they finally get onto the field. You start this thing off, and they get to the third quarter. The teams are once again forced to get off the field. Thunderstorms, lightning, you know the deal. Every lightning strike is another 20 to 30 minutes, whatever the kind of the delay is. After that prolonged delay, these teams get into the locker room. They talk with each other amongst themselves, and of course with the other kind of administration hosting the event. They're like, this isn't going anywhere. And so somebody pitches the idea. Let's go down to Crawfordsville High School. It's less than 2 miles down the road. It's a 5-minute drive, which my first impression is not what a great idea. My first impression is, how the hell is the weather any different there? It's 2 miles down the road. What changed from you getting on the bus and getting down to this high school? Okay, that aside, that's exactly what they did. They moved to Crawfordsville High School, and they finished this game. It was like a minute left in the third quarter, and then what do you have it? Little Giants, they rally in the fourth quarter. 17 points for the win. That's a momentum changer. The game basically stopped and restarted again. It was resuscitated at a new venue. I've never heard of anything like this. I really couldn't wrap my head around why this would happen or how.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and say I knew that before the show started. I don't know if you guys saw my reaction as Kobe was saying. I'm not kidding. As Kobe was saying that, I was looking into the camera. I'm like, did this actually happen? That is, I have no words for that. Just absolutely incredible comeback by Wabash, obviously, but that's otherworldly.
I mean, that's not the story here, fellas. Who cares what the football got played? But have you guys ever seen anything like this ever? I mean, I need some investigations done on why this got moved 2 miles down the road. I mean, was there lightning right next to the stadium? And there was. I mean, I've never seen anything like this.
Allegedly, reading some of the articles, these people, the coaches, admin, whatever, got together and all looked collectively at the weather report. I don't know if any of them have meteorology background or experience, but collectively the decision was, if we move this thing 2 miles down the road, we're going to be in the clear. I couldn't find anything. My initial impression was maybe the playing surface was just beyond repair, but I never saw anything about that, right? Because that would have came to my mind right away. But that was the first win at home for first-year head coach Jake Gilbert. And that's a really interesting way to get that done. But congratulations to him and the squad. Nearly 25 years ago to the day, fellas, the Little Giants moved their 2000 home North Coast Athletic Conference opener against Wittenberg to Crawfordsville High School as well. That courtesy of D3Football.com because of the weather and field conditions. Now, I didn't see anything about the field conditions, and I'll tell you right now, as someone who, I remember very vividly, high school, we're playing West Bloomfield, my senior year. The boys at Lake Orion, the Dragons, are rolling. We're up by probably 2 scores against the West Bloomfield team that had Donovan Edwards, CJ Harris. I could go on the list of some of these guys you might know that are going to be playing on Sundays here very, very shortly. Makari Page. Anyways, lightning delay. We go into the locker room up 2 scores, and this thing gets delayed 30, 40 minutes. We come out there, warm up again. It was a brand new ball game. We got our butts kicked, and I should say butts kicked. We got into 4 overtimes and lost that one. But you talk about a momentum changer. Imagine going into the locker room for that a long time. They went and loaded up onto school buses and drove down the road and started this thing up again.
I mean, we saw this in the Super Bowl, several years ago, right? Kind of a Ravens 49ers situation. But to get up and pack up our bags and go across town, unreal.
Crazy.
Unreal.
Crazy. Also, kudos to them for actually finding the transportation. The fact that they could just source buses and drivers that were going to make this happen at the drop of a hat was pretty impressive. But we'll keep things moving. Let's talk about the first 2-0 start for Hampton-Sydney since 2012, boys. A team that we haven't talked about too much. I think we posted them recently on the socials for an international trip that they made in the spring, which certainly seems to be paying dividends here in the fall. That international trip is kind of a coveted thing in D3 football because it does allow for you to have a lot of extra practices and reps in that spring outside of your normal period, so to speak. But we're potentially looking at a team that can run the ODAC this year in Hampton-Sydney. All roads lead to Week 11 at Randolph-Macon. It's the 130th edition of the game. The game, love that. The Tigers, they've not beaten the Yellow Jackets since 2013. That's 11 straight. This year could be the year that Hampton-Sydney is back on top. Still a lot of ball to be determined. Till then, Yellow Jackets, they were just upset at Central College 10-0. We knew about that Dutchman defense. They knew they're going to be legit. We just found out maybe how legit. It's all about the league play, who gets the auto bid. That's how D3 football works. Seth, what can you tell me about the Tiger offense?
Yeah, anytime that you bring back your quarterback, especially a team captain in Carter Cito, you're going to be feeling pretty good about yourself. Like I said, this is his second year starting. He actually leads the ODAC in passing yards and touchdowns this year so far. Only has one interception, so he's been really efficient so far, but that's nothing new. He actually led the conference last year in passing efficiency. He's got two really, really talented targets. Jordan Jackson and Manning Lasso both had career days, both had a pair of touchdowns. Hampton-Sydney, I mean, they seem pretty unstoppable on offense so far. They've had two really good wins, 38 points per game. So shout out to the offensive coordinator, Max Beal, and passing game coordinator, Teddy Spooner. They got the boys clicking right now.
100%. Now, Jimmy, talk to me about the other side of the ball. What do they need to improve on, and what have they already done very well in 2025?
So defensively, both of these guys here, both sophomores, Frank Brewer and Mitch Latimus, had extremely great games. 12 tackles apiece for the Tigers defense. Latimus also adding a pick and 2 pass breakups, and Brewer had a tackle for a loss, couple quarterback hurries. Career high in tackles and a career tying high for Latimus as well. So both of them had spectacular games. Parks Cromwell, senior safety and team captain, Markevius Graves Franklin, also both had 11 tackles. Also had 1 forced fumble and a quarterback hurry as well. Graves Franklin had 2 tackles for losses, and Townsend with 9 tackles as well and a pick, 2 pass breakups. It seems like these guys are flying to the ball because there are numerous players with 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 tackles, and that just shows that these guys are flying around. So look for that to continue the rest of this year.
I love the fact, too, that the game is not until the end of the season. Sometimes you get stuck in terms of scheduling or other deals with these rivalries fall on like a week 2 or week 3 in the slate. And not that it takes anything away from the rivalries, but the fact that in this situation in the ODAC, we have the two, what are shaping up to be two of the top contenders inside of the conference, that the last game of the season really could mean something when it comes to an AQ and conference championship rights. Those are always the best in situations. Now, moving forward, moving out west, we talked about Lewis and Clark a little bit on the live show, talking about the Oregon Cup, right? Oregon Cup games, if you will, and the setup and structure of that. Lewis and Clark is balling out right now. They have gotten their first votes in the national poll since 2011, boys. It's been a while since the Pioneers have been on the national stage in the national conversation. It's only 2 votes. Certainly a step in the right direction. Their head coach, Brett Elliott, who, again, we've talked about a little bit on the show. I know we've posted about on social media a little bit. He's a former Gallardi Trophy winner when he was at Linfield, so very familiar with the out west stage in terms of D3 football. He went on to have a very illustrious career in the coaching world at Division I and Division III. Went back to his alma mater at Linfield, was the offensive coordinator, the play caller for, I believe, 6 seasons, if I'm remembering correctly, before making over the move now to be the head coach for the Pioneers. He seems to have injected a lot of energy, excitement, and most importantly, boys, confidence in this Lewis and Clark squad.
I mean, yeah, it seems like every time Brett Elliott touches a field, there's points scored. Actually, I can't remember if his record got broken by Blaine Hawkins a couple years ago, but he's the career leader in offensive or passing yards per game in a career. And like I said, I believe that might have got passed up a couple of years ago. But Logan Hansen has this shout out, has this game the over-under at 64.4. So there's going to be points scored in that game, and I might venture to say that it's going to go over.
Yeah. The game that he's talking about on the road at reigning SCIAC defending champion Pomona Pitzer, that's a big one. This is a true test for this team. Not to say they haven't been tested before, but Puget Sound, George Fox, I believe the 2 wins on their schedule, not necessarily marquee wins for them. Good stepping stones and foundation laying type blocks for this Pioneer squad. But Pomona Pitzer is a team that I'm familiar with, and obviously not very much in our neck of the woods and geographic location. Total side tangent. I don't know if you guys saw the logo change for Pitzer. They used to have like the seagull head with like the sailor cap, and they've downgraded to like a orange and blue, like P and P. Might be one of the worst downgrades in all of college athletics. Need to look at that. And if Pomona Pitzer or one of you guys are listening, you screwed up really bad. You really dropped the ball on that. Sad to see those epic logos go and become into the secondary.
What is happening with that? I hate that. What are we doing?
Yeah.
I mean, this is across the board. I mean, we're ruining logos left and right. I live in Iowa, and we're changing the Casey's logo to something. I mean, I could go on for days for this, but what are we doing, America? Like,
hopefully, maybe they'll pull a Cracker Barrel and bring it back.
I hope so. I was just about to say
we
that.
We can start the public outrage for Pomona Pitzer and bring back the goal.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, by the way, Seth, I have to comment on Casey's. They got some really good breakfast pizza.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's
breakfast pizza.
I mean, we just the arena here in Des Moines. It used to be called Wells Fargo. It's now the Casey Center, and I think about Casey's Pizza every single morning. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, the best place to get pizza in Iowa is a gas station.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it in my life, but that would be my first stop.
No, I became very familiar. I became very familiar with Casey's Breakfast Pizza after some long nights in Iowa City. So it saved my morning several times. Definitely.
Pomona Pitzer probably does not know about Casey's, given their spot out there on the West Coast. But this Lewis and Clark team, boys, embracing the new, right, with a new head coach, a new roster with almost 40 new additions, different staff. They're looking for their first 3-0 start since 2011, of course, the same year that they got those votes on the national poll. So that's a matchup this weekend that I am certainly excited to follow up on and talk about. But I wanted to kind of devote a segment here as we close out the show to those games this weekend that we have our eye on in particular. I'm going to start things off. UW-Whitewater going on the road down to Belton, Texas, take on Mary Hardin-Baylor, number 16 at number 6 in the country. And the first thing that jumps off to me about this matchup is that this in history has been of the Giants in D3 football, the Purple Giants. And as of late, of course, red is the new purple, has kind of been the thing that has been thrown around. The Purple Giants may have been sleeping giants the last couple of years. Looks like the some bitches are awake. Mary Hardin-Baylor, Whitewater, these two, this matchup, although in very, very recent history, may have not had the allure and kind of the national spotlight that it once had. This feels like this could be a step back in the right direction. This should be the premier game in all of D3 football, and we're going to talk about some other good ones here, boys, but this feels like this game has that energy back, and especially being in the stadium down there at Mary Hardin-Baylor that I hope we can see one day in person. This is something that I'm very excited about. The series, boys, is tied at 3 wins and 3 losses for both teams since 2018, so very recently it's been incredibly balanced. It's going to be determined, between the tackles. What game isn't, right? Everything starts and ends with between the tackles. Whitewater, their offensive identity certainly lives there this year, although the quarterback play is something of a question mark / exclamation point in terms of we could have more upside at that position for a Warhawk squad. Feels like, though, this is going to be a massive contest. Mary Hardin-Baylor coming off a bye week after a pretty solid win over a good Bethel NAIA squad. Both these teams winning over decent NAIA teams with Whitewater taking on St. Xavier. So this one for me certainly needs to be in the conversation. But Seth, why don't you keep things going?
Yeah, I've actually played and coached against both of those teams. Let me tell you, I mean, if you would have told me a few years ago, now don't look up the score of that Mary Hardin-Baylor win, I will say. 84-6, never seen 84 points on a scoreboard before. Shout out. But if you would have told me then that Whitewater and Mary Hardin-Baylor would be ranked 16 and 6, I would have told you you're totally on something. But I'm absolutely going to have my eyes on that game. But the other one that I'm going to be flipping to is John Hopkins, number 3, and Susquehanna, number 4. I mean, number 3 versus 4. I mean, how can you get better than that?
Sure.
I think the only way you can do better than that if it's Whitewater versus Marathon better. But I digress. It feels like right. There's been something missing though, right? And that's been Rashawn Lamont, right? Seems to be
Yes.
battling some injuries. His head coach Tom Perkovich said that he is week to week. So potentially we're going to get him back this week. You're going to have two very, very high quality teams in this one with two very, very good quarterbacks that are going to be balling out. Now, the interesting thing is Susquehanna has won 3 out of the last 4, but they're ranked below Johns Hopkins, right? And
Correct.
so I feel like they're going to be feeling a little chippy going into this one. Logan Hansen also has the Blue Jays favored by 6.8 points. Feels like too
Okay.
much. But I'm very excited to tune into this one.
Yeah, and that Le Mans deal is an interesting one. You have to imagine maybe that plays a part of that
Certainly.
ranking in terms of we don't know if he's actually going to be on the field. I don't believe we've even seen him dress this
Nope.
season, let alone
No.
take a snap on the field. And so that's got to be something that leaves some of the voters and other people tentative in terms of what this matchup could look like. And I want to say, I was going to find the tweet to confirm, but Ehrlich, the quarterback for Susquehanna, he just eclipsed 5,000 yards, I do believe, in his career. He's a dog. Like, we've seen him do
Unbelievable.
it at a very high level for a long time. But that is going to be a very interesting one. We all should be following that one. But Jimmy, why don't you close us out?
Sure, yeah, we got number 20 Barry as 5.5 point favorites against number 23 Carnegie Mellon. This one should be a very high flying affair. Barry's had a really hot start coming in 2-0. Obviously, Carnegie 1-1, losing to Lacrosse last week. Looking to use home field advantage and potentially slow them down. And then Barry is just loaded with weapons all across the field on offense. They're literally their entire offense is just full of studs. So Carnegie Mellon's gonna have to generate a lot of pressure, disrupt the rhythm of that offense, and force some turnovers. And Barry's defense, especially the defensive line, is going to have to step up big time. Carnegie Mellon's got a really solid O-line and a pretty formidable run game as well. We didn't see that as much last week, but look for them to get back on track with their identity. And then obviously in these early non-conference games, like there's tons of plays like missed field goals, big returns, interceptions, fumbles, whatever maybe that could swing the momentum in a big way. So both these teams are going to have to need very clean play here in this game.
108 points from that Barry offense in the first 2 weeks of the season. That's something that certainly jumps off the page. Now, it was against Huntington and LaGrange. That's not exactly someone who sells tickets for a matchup, so to speak. No shots fired. But this Carnegie Mellon matchup is one that they've got marked on their boards, right? After this, you get inside of SAA play, and you've got some teams in this conference that are certainly going to be great competition for the Vikings. Trinity, you got on the list. Center College, we've talked about. Maryville College seems to have a duo offensively, quarterback, wide receiver. The offensive skill there for the Scots is incredible. They close out the year at Southwestern, who could have a team down there in Georgetown, Texas. So certainly a lot to be determined for this Barry team. But yes, Jimmy, the early consensus is that the offense is about as potent as ever for the Vikings.
Yeah, it seems that way for sure.
Well, I think that's about it, fellas. I appreciate y'all. We will, I guess, formal announcement, be taking probably what is at least like a 2-week break from Small School Saturday. Little bit of time to recharge, refresh, go back, study the tape, watch some film, come back at it with a refreshed and renewed product. But those were a blast, and I can't wait to do more of them, fellas. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, baby.
Only going up from here, fellas.
D1R to the moon.